Quick video today, guys. I wanted to take a quick look at Unknown 9 Awakening's PC port and share my thoughts. We'll go over the settings, performance, and what I think of the gameplay in the first hour or so. Now let's quickly go over the settings here. I'm using a 3440 by 1440p ultra-wide display with an RTX 4090 and Ryzen 7800X3D, so pretty high-end build. And I like to check out the ultra-wide because it is important to PC ports, and I want to see how it's implemented in this game. So we do have quite a few settings here, nothing crazy, but the game does actually have support for FSR 2. There is no DLSS in the game. This is also an AMD sponsored game, I believe, and we also have ray tracing as well, but we're going to talk more about that later because it's a very, I don't want to say lazy, but it kind of is very unexciting implementation of ray tracing. Now, changing some settings requires a game restart. So what I've done is I've maxed out all the settings, including the ray tracing, restarted the game, and we are beginning. So everything's maxed out. I'm showing all the CPU cores so you guys can see how it runs. And we're GPU bound at the moment, but I mean, we're getting a bunch of frames, right? For an Unreal Engine 5, that's pretty good. Although graphically, the game looks pretty last gen, I would say. But hey, good gameplay can trump graphics any day. So what is the gameplay like then? Well, it kind of feels like an Xbox 360 game. Not exciting or inspiring or anything like that. It's essentially go from arena to arena, linked through corridors and transitioning points. And there's a group of enemies you have to deal with. There's often stealth involved. And they also have placed these flammable tanks conveniently spread throughout where the enemies are. And you can force push the enemies into them, making them explode. Or you can trigger an explosion to attract enemies or kill enemies. That sort of thing. It's just, I don't know how to explain it, but it's not really that immersive. It just feels like, I don't know, like little trials set up. You have to kind of navigate your way through, and then there's some narrative thrown in here and there. Now, keep in mind that I only played the game for about an hour and a half, so I don't know if things change later on, but right off the start, it's not really exciting at all. Not to me anyway, and I tend to like stealth games too. There's a lot of stealth in this game. Oh, and there's also X-ray vision, by the way. The plague of stealth games. And yeah, I'm not a big fan of that one, but it's an ability you don't have to necessarily use if you don't want to. But the biggest blow to the gameplay for me is the combat. It's just, it's very clunky. I don't know how to explain it, but the enemies and your character, it's almost like they like teleport to one another, and then the enemies, like, you'll be attacking them, right? And then they just like rollerblade through the sand and they just disappeared like 5 meters away. It's just very distracting, especially if you lock onto them. It just takes the camera with it too, kind of making it disorienting in some ways. But the combat is not very good. And I do get some abilities. You can mind control enemies to do things, but that'll also trigger an alarm of some sort, like it'll alert all the enemies, which I guess kind of makes sense. But yeah, the combat didn't grab me at all. So yeah, it's not, but that's the least of this game's problems. Now, as far as the PC port itself, there's quite a bit of stuttering in this game. And while the ultra-wide support is well implemented, you know, the UI scales properly and everything, the cutscenes are in 16:9. But not all of them. Some of them are not in 16:9. Some of them are in ultra-wide. Really strange, because they're rendered in real time. So that is very confusing. When you launch the game for the very first time, it does actually appear to be caching shaders. If you look at the CPU utilization, it's at like 95%. That is usually shader caching behavior. The game has stutters scattered throughout the gameplay. There's traversal stutter, and then there's also shader compilation. I mean, look at this. That is insane for this level of hardware. Now, it's not as intrusive as Silent Hill 2, I would say, but it's still quite distracting. Even though I was pretty sure it was shader compilation stutter, I actually wanted to go the extra mile and test this. If we take a look at this scene, which is towards the very beginning of the game, when you go through it for the very first time and the wall breaks down, there's quite a bit of stuttering. And then if you load the game again and then go through it a second time, it's a lot smoother because those shaders have been cached. And you see these things kind of happen throughout when you engage combat for the first time, or certain abilities like explosions, they often tend to stutter. And then if you go through it again, or you see the same effect again, it's smooth. Speaking of traversal stutter, well, let's talk about traversal, actually. Well, you can't get lost in this game. Everything is painted white. Climbable walls have a bunch of holes in them. So, I mean, there's no way you could mistake it. And I just find this to break the immersion. I get it. Sometimes you have to guide players to some extent. But, I mean, this game has corridors. It's not like an open world game where you can easily get lost. So, it just seems like, I don't know, man. It's just very generic and very unexciting. Very forgettable is what I'd like to say, at least so far. But what about the ray tracing? So I like ray tracing, and we always take a look at it. This is a PC channel after all, and this game has ray tracing. What is ray traced in the game? Well, the only thing that's ray traced in the game is shadows from your bracer's lighting. So when you enter dark areas, your bracers emit a light. It's like a torch in other games. And as you can see here, our characters have a shadow. That is ray trace shadows. And you'll often see this if you have ray tracing enabled. You enter these caves, the frame rate would drop a little. So I think the reason why you get such a good frame rate outside of these areas is that the ray tracing is not on. Now, if we take a look at this same exact area, as soon as you enter the cave, the light from your bracers comes on. And as you can see, there is no shadows emitted from your characters at all. But other than that, it looks very similar. Whereas previously we were getting around 120 FPS, right now we're getting around 170 FPS on an RTX 4090. That is at 3440 by 1440 native, by the way. We're not using any FSR in this video at all. And that seems to cost about 30% or so to enable ray tracing, which seems a bit high if you ask me, just for shadows, but that's what it is. Not really that exciting though, as far as ray tracing implementations go. Well, I guess to wrap up my thoughts for what is essentially a preview, just me checking out the beginning of the game, is that I think $50 is too much, at least in my opinion. The game just seems really outdated, clunky. Visuals are fine. I mean, people have trashed the visuals. I think they're all right. They're not too bad. The game's not particularly demanding, but it has stuttering issues that can be immersion breaking. There's a lot of other things that are immersion breaking too, by the way, like white paint everywhere and enemies skating all over the sand as you are attacking them. So yeah, not. I would probably pay maybe 20 bucks, 30 at the most in a sale. I would be willing to just give it a try if I have nothing to play. But again, I have other games that I'd much rather play. Like I'm going to check out MechWarrior 5 Clans next. Played a little bit of that, and it's quite fun, actually. It's also on Game Pass, by the way. But yeah, that's going to be it for Unknown 9. I would say overall disappointing, and it could have done with a bit more time in the oven, although I don't think the outcome would be really that much different. But leave your comments down below, let me know what you think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? It's okay to disagree, by the way. And give the video a like if you liked it. Consider subscribing. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.